Imagine what the Washington scandal police would do if they discovered a congressman pushed for a bill written for his own personal enrichment. Imagine. Imagine if this congressman was shown to have already made millions of dollars off of exactly this kind of legislation. Darrell Issa would have that congressman thrown in leg irons and dragged before his committee, where, of course, the culprit would take the Fifth Amendment as the Ethics Committee started working on his expulsion and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney started working on an indictment. But none of that would happen if it's a Republican congressman we're talking about, or if it's a Democrat. Even if the congressman was making sure that he gets a direct cash payoff from government funds in the most purely socialistic program this government has, agriculture subsidies. Tennessee's Republican socialism-hating Congressman Stephen Fincher has received over $3.5 million directly from the government in socialistic agriculture subsidies, which is, of course, the single stupidest form of socialism this country embraces. When Stephen Fincher went to Washington, all he wanted to do was get a seat on the Agriculture Committee because that's where his money is. He thinks it's his money. He thinks he deserves it. No one who takes money from the Agriculture Department thinks they don't deserve it. They believe they earned their money the old-fashioned way, by lobbying for it and simply taking it straight out of the United States Treasury. You'd never know it if you heard Stephen Fincher speaking in the Agriculture Committee markup of the Farm Bill, from which he and his family have been living off of millions and millions of dollars for generations.
Now, we're all here on this committee making decisions about other people's money.
Well, yes, you are. But you, Stephen Fincher, are also making decisions about your money, what you think of as your money. But your money is actually my money and all the people's money who pay taxes into the federal government and don't get any kind of subsidy from the federal government whatsoever. Congressman Stephen Fincher gets away with this socialistic thing for two reasons. One, Republicans and Democrats in Congress love socialism much more than they understand or admit. No socialist program gets more unbridled bipartisan support than agriculture socialism, our single worst and stupid and most inefficient form of socialism in this country, and cruelest form of socialism in this country. Because agriculture is a global market, and we subsidize our farmers at the direct competitive expense of farmers in the third world, farmers in Africa. And then we say to Africa, why are you having trouble with your agriculture? The other reason, there is no law against conflict of interest in the Congress. No judge would be allowed to preside over a trial in which he had a financial interest in the outcome. There are conflict of interest tripwires all over the legal profession, but if you're in the agriculture business and you get elected to Congress, everyone understands why you want to get on the Agriculture Committee, and everyone's cool with that. You want to get on the Agriculture Committee to pay yourself money in addition to your congressional salary. Not long ago, the Republican leader of the Senate was a major owner of hospitals and medical facilities in this country, and he never recused himself from a vote on legislation directly affecting his wealth and income. Try to think back to the last time you heard about a senator or a member of the House recusing himself or herself because of a conflict of interest. It does not happen. The Republicans and Democrats in the commercial real estate business vote on tax provisions on commercial real estate all the time. The Republicans and Democrats in the Congress who are heavily invested in oil stocks or alternative energy sources vote on bills that can personally enrich them all the time, and no one in Congress thinks anything of it, and no reporter in Washington uses the word scandal for that. It should be a crime. If you're in the agriculture business, you get elected to Congress, the one committee you should not be allowed to serve on is the Agriculture Committee. If you own banks and you're elected to Congress, you should not be allowed to serve on the Banking Committee. How hard is that to figure out? Congress hasn't figured it out, and the Washington press corps hasn't figured it out. And there is no editorial campaign anywhere to get conflict of interest out of Congress. And so, a socialistic looter of the people's money, a guy who's taking it right out of the Treasury and sticking it in his pocket, can get away with saying things like this in Congress.
We represent the people, and we represent the people's money, and we have to be good stewards of that.
And he is allowed to say that without objection when he is voting on a bill to enrich himself and his family in order to continue to enrich himself. A bill he is voting for that will cut food stamps for the neediest people among us. But he has a justification for that. All criminals have a justification for their crimes. He finds his justification in the Bible.
I looked at 2 Thessalonians 3:10, for even when we were with you, we gave you this rule, the one who is unwilling to work shall not eat.
He is quoting the Bible to support cutting food stamps. The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. 45% of the beneficiaries of food stamps are children. What work would the lying Republican agriculture socialist have the children do for their food? The line he is using from the Bible is actually irrelevant to his point. The admonishment about those not willing to work, not eating, was directed at misguided people who stopped working in order to sit and wait for the second coming of Jesus Christ. The biblical line was written to emphasize that sitting and doing nothing while waiting for the second coming of Jesus Christ was not a good idea. As I've pointed out many times before, there is good socialism and bad socialism, just as there is good capitalism and bad capitalism. The challenge of the modern world is to decide when socialism works better than capitalism and when capitalism works better than socialism, and how to mix the two. The economically illiterate among us, which is to say most of us, and virtually all politicians and almost all of the Washington press corps, have no idea what socialism actually is, which means they have no idea how much socialism they actually support, like Social Security and Medicare, the crown jewels of American socialism, the good socialism. And so, for example, whenever my name is mentioned to Bill O'Reilly, he always says that O'Donnell is a socialist, not realizing that he is too. O'Reilly and I merely differ in our degree of support for socialism. The worst enemy of good socialism is bad socialism, like agriculture socialism. And the worst socialists are the ones who push bad socialism for their own personal enrichment, like Republican Congressman Stephen Fincher, who is willing to take food out of the mouths of children as long as he can still use government money to enrich himself. There should be a special place in the Congressional Hall of Shame for Stephen Fincher. There should be a place in federal prison for Stephen Fincher, but Congress has made sure that conflict of interest in Congress is perfectly legal. And no one in Washington thinks that's a scandal.